2021, 4 men got together to make a radio show that nobody asked for. This is the result.
Welcome to Broad Street Radio. I'm Michael Morris. Today, I cleared the deck to bring in somebody very important. I will say a friend, but also, let's say a brother in arms in the media business. Randy Malloy. Randy, how are you?
I'm reasonably well, thank you.
I love the fact that you are you're at that medium level right now. You're at that very professional media person. 5 minutes ago, you were shouting from the rooftops, correct?
Well, sure, I do that.
That's right, because we all have a mental illness in this business. Fair?
We're in the business. That's right. The mental illness.
I've tried to explain when people are like, what is it like being in radio or media? It is a group of C+ students who never read a book who just seem to get by and do well, right?
I'm sorry, I don't have that answer, Senator.
Exactly.
I plead the fifth.
So obviously you can see by our shirts. First of all, thank you for giving me this shirt. I was going to wear it anyway. But explain who you are and your background, because the people on YouTube may not have encountered your station before.
Okay. Well, where do you want me to start?
Well, I want you to start back in the 90s. I want you to start at the beginning of the radio station's history.
Okay. So, all right, so I'll give you the long, short story.
Yeah.
Brevity, not my strong suit, so I'll try my best. All right, I'm not from Ohio or Columbus. I'm from New York City. I was born in Manhattan. I was raised in New Jersey. So I went to school in New Jersey, drove an ambulance, had all sorts of weird jobs. I was a medic, and I did not know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just knew what I didn't want to be. And that's how my career path guided me that way. What I don't want to do when I grow up. Someday when I grow up, I'll figure it out. But for now, this is what I'm doing. So I moved to Columbus in the late 80s and went back to school at The Ohio State University. I was teaching telecommunication like 770 and learning about radio and TV. Cell phones weren't a thing yet. They were talking about someday there'll be cell phone stores on every corner. And we were all like, woo, the future.
And the big brick phone is all you had.
Yeah, I had
Or the
one.
car phone, yeah.
Oh, I had a brick. It was amazing. I came to Ohio and I was already sort of in front of the 8 ball because I was weird and different, because I had an East Coast attitude and this sort of Midwest sort of kindness I wasn't used to. I was used to get out of my effing way. I'm walking here. That's what I grew up with. So, oh, wow, everyone's so polite. This is great. So I graduated school, and during the 90s, late 1990, a radio station came on the air in Columbus, Ohio, CD101, 101.1 FM out of Grove City, Ohio. Happened to be the same city we're in right now.
Right.
And it was from a company out of New Jersey called Video Services. They were what you would consider a house flipper. They would look for underutilized markets that allowed the FCC to petition a license to broadcast a radio station. It's all per capita. So you have enough people. Grove City at the time, in the late 80s, had enough people to support a radio station. So this company out of New Jersey created one. And the minute that they got the FCC approval for construction, they put it up for sale. So it went on the air August 21st of 1990. And a local businessman named Roger Vaughn, who basically was our developer, he'd been out west and listened to a radio station called KBCO, which is what you would consider a Jack FM format back then.
To explain, if you don't know what a Jack format is, it plays anything.
Pretty much anything. It's sort of this mishmash of, it's the hits from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and today.
But there's no jocks. It's not talk intensive.
Correct.
It's song after song, so it's an iPod shuffle, essentially.
It is exactly that. It's built on the premise that before Spotify, the idea was you can listen to anything because people's tastes are very eclectic. So you could have anything from the Doobie Brothers to Led Zeppelin to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And just across this gambit, there'd be some sort of threads, but there was really no format. It was Jack. It was everything. So this station did that. They sort of wanted Jack, whatever you want to play, the DJs played. So he came back and he was a developer and an investor, and he purchased this 101.1 FM in the spring of 1991. About that time is when I had sort of discovered it. I was getting ready to graduate to Ohio State University, and the radio station did a promotion. They wanted to do something with Warren Miller Films, he used to be a big ski guy who made these epic ski log videos way before YouTube.
It's one of the first IMAX films, actually.
Yes, correct. Because he would do like hella skiing in the Alps or in like Chile and make these amazing grand people snowboarding.
But the movie would be 41 minutes because there's nobody talking. You're just, and you couldn't imagine this huge screen. And he really set the trend for movies beyond that. But in the beginning, it was just ski involved.
That's it. It was like a drone footage.
Before drones
and before snowboarding, because he sort of had like the first snowboard video with Burton doing their things. But anyway, I was the president of the Ohio State University Ski Club at the time, and they wanted to get involved with the ski club. So I said, sure. And, asked and got to meet the people at the station and said, do you have any internships? I need to do something before I graduate. And they said, no, we don't have any yet. We haven't gotten that far since they were so new. So in the fall of 91, I got contacted and they said, well, we're going to do an internship. I said, great. So I was one of the very first interns. It was me and this other guy, Bill. We were the first 2 interns. And so it was like working for a startup, I imagine today, because no one really knew what they were doing. It was kind of like, hey, by the seat of your pants, like, let's try this to see if that works. And if it did, it was great. And that became sort of policy. If it didn't, well, we got to refigure that. That one didn't work out. Let's try it this way. So it was this, so I get to hang out with rock stars and someone buys my beer. I'm like, sweet.
Right.
This is great.
It's like the ultimate college kid job, and they give you a check.
It was the ultimate. Oh, no, I didn't get paid. This was the.
Oh, that's right. When you were an intern, excuse me.
This was intern, not paid. So I did that for a few months, and it was exactly that. I got to hang out with rock stars, and someone bought me beer. And I was like, cool. How bad could this be? So in the spring, when I graduated from the college, they said, hey, do you want a job here? And I was like, so you're gonna pay me to hang out with rock stars, and someone's gonna buy my beer? I'm like, sure. So I had already gap yeared, or whatever you want to call it. I was an older student. I had gone to college already, so I was like, sure. They offered me on Friday. I started Monday. A lot of my friends were like, we're going to take a year off. We're going to become ski bums and whitewater rafting. And I'm like, I'll see you in the funny papers. I'm going to have a job. So again, now I worked for a startup. So I got to sort of dictate policy. I was the promotions assistant. There was no promotions director, so I was the assistant to no one.
Right.
My boss was the marketing director. So we just kind of created stuff. I created the green team because we wanted to do environmental things. It's what I grew up doing, that kind of stuff. Camping, leave the place better than when you got there. So we did environmental things and then figured out ways to make money. And, we got cause marketing. I was a big guerrilla marketer. I read all the guerrilla marketing books, and I was a big guerrilla marketer. So we did a lot of guerrilla marketing stuff. Again, we're a startup. We don't have money. Right. So we became our own street team and then offered it to other people. Hey, we can do that for you. We can activate your partnerships. We can create that. We can make that happen. So we created that sort of part of the station, and that grew over time. A couple years down the road, we moved locations from this sort of bombed out, I don't know what you want to call it, building that had like bars on the windows. And we literally took the drop ceiling out and built shelves in the drop ceiling so we could store the t-shirts and stuff because it was that small of an office. But the owner built this lavish office for us in the brewery district. And my boss at the time, Wendy Steele, God rest her soul, she didn't want to do it anymore. She was like, I'm out. I can't do this. I was like, well, take a sales job. They won't make you apply. Just be a salesperson. You'll be amazing. You know everybody. You've been doing this forever. You're one of those people that just sort of can do it. So I said, look, I'll help you. You help me. You kind of nudge them to make me take your job, and I'll nudge them to give you a sales job. So we kind of worked in cahoots with each other, and that's what happened. She became the salesperson, and I became the director of marketing. And then I really had the chance to do what I wanted to do and say, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. So I did that for, a dozen years or so. And then one day I got an envelope from my boss, the owner of the company, and he said, he said, don't open this up until you get home. And I was like, okay, sure.
Which is always a good sign.
Oh, yeah. He turns his back and I'm like,
There's always good news in an envelope you can't open.
right. I open this thing up and I read it. I'm like, oh shit, I'm fired. I was like, damn it. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna do something else. And I read a second time. I'm like, wait, I'm not fired. My boss is fired. I'm the boss. So now I'm like reading like, holy shit. Like they fired my boss and they just made me the boss. Like, what the hell? Nobody didn't even ask
who the
me.
hell
It's
should be hiring you?
Wait, and don't even ask me. Here, read this later kind of thing. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm the boss. So then I was the boss. And I was like, okay. And I was the director of operations. And it was me and the sales manager. And that was, we ran the company. And he, as the owner, he kind of sat back and said, do your thing and run it. So we did that until we basically 1025 or 101 at the time. He got tired of doing it. He did it for 20 years and he wanted to retire and said, I'm selling it. So he sold the frequency to the Ohio State University.
It kind of comes all full circle. They gave and they took from you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sort of the 11th hour, we had to move somewhere. We were going to do something and, we could find a place to move the tower and still continue at 102.5 and rent this frequency. So I was like, cool, let's do that. But we really didn't in earnest find a place to go. So sort of the 11th hour, I was like, how about this? How about I buy the company? And, I'll just be the boss. More than just in charge, I'll be actually the boss. And it was met with some incredulation, sort of the old, go F yourself. And I'm like, okay, then. Apparently this isn't going to work. But literally at the 11th hour, the last second, he said, go for it. You think you can do it? Go for it. And I said, okay. So I bought the intellectual property and ran it. Found a new location, moved into the brewery district, into our own building, and just, went for it. And then it was a startup all over again because I had to sort of reinvent what we did. We did it for, 20 years, but now it's like, okay, so now I have to change everything because we're different. The world's different. Radio changed. Social media was now a big thing. Everyone had smartphones and there was all this different stuff. So it was reinventing ourselves every day. And it was funny because, now 20 years ago, about 10 years in, we sat down with a bunch of really smart people at the time that were in radio and that were in TV and that were in, people that had big brains that thought about futures and stuff. And they said, so you've been doing this for a decade now. So there was all these questions. There was one question that stuck out with me and I'll never forget it because it was like, okay, so do we grow old with our audience, sort of a AOR radio station, or do we let the listeners pass through us? And it was interesting because some of the brain trust people kind of were like, well, and I was very adamant along with a couple people like, we let the listeners pass through us, knowing that we'll have to acquire new listeners constantly,
right.
But it's the only way to achieve longevity. We have to be able to adapt and overcome and change constantly. And if that means that I sort of have with this idea of let the listeners grow with us, you pick a time and date, music from this date and this year to this date and this year, and you just kind of go. And that goes with you, and the audience goes with you. And as they age out or move away, you don't acquire a lot of new ones, so your audience does this and this and this and this over time. And I said, no.
Versus the other way where you've got a classic rock station where that audience that is with you in the 70s stays with you today, but they're 58, 60 years old.
Correct.
And their buying patterns change.
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh,
whereas yours is your core audience keeps moving, but it stays the same.
Correct.
It's not the same people, but the culture
stays the same. The buying patterns stay the same. And for all intent and purposes, the audience stays the same. Yes, I will keep some of my older end that will stay, but a lot of them fall off. I always equate it to like a conveyor belt. When people get on the conveyor belt and they say, oh, CD101, I just know they got back on it over here somewhere.
Right.
Or they say, oh, CD1025, they got on it about here. Oh, CD9, they got on it recently. And that doesn't matter where they got on it. I just know at some point there's an end and they may fall off it. And that's okay, because I'm always pushing people onto the conveyor belt.
Well, let's talk about that audience and culture that here in Columbus, Ohio, people don't look at this as the cultural capital. Fair to say? All right.
Sure. Yes.
So when we're talking about media in general, what we're trying to do is we're trying to fit everybody in a box, at least on the end of the table where you're buying advertising, right? Mm-hmm. So your intent is supposed to be, show me that box where I can put these people in, right?
Yes.
When you look at corporate radio, because we haven't talked about that, like my background is I worked at 2 family-owned stations here. By the time I got into corporate radio, I'm like, oh, this is horseshit. Because I thought...
This is the devil.
It was literally going from working at a mom and pop kind of place to Wall Street.
Right.
But the difference was on Wall Street, they don't care who gets hurt by it not working.
Right.
Right. So I told you to buy this stock. Oh, that went bad. I don't care about you now. I'll just find someone to take your place.
Yes.
Whereas in a cultural situation, I've got to take care of these people and super serve them to keep them happy on both ends.
Under promise, over deliver.
Right. So the best way to look at this for somebody that's watching that has no idea what the business of radio is or media in general, this is you run a local IGA and you're going up against Jeff Bezos every single day.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The advantage that I see that when we have conversations is Jeff Bezos can't move as fast as you can.
No.
Now, the difference is people already are flowing to him because, again, how many boxes can I check off? Mm-hmm. The misnomer is by checking off boxes, my advertising program works.
Right.
And you don't even know that it works.
No.
Right?
No.
So what is your mindset? Because, again, you've had to change. The part that I respect about what you've done is nothing has ever kept you down long enough. We'll figure out a different way to survive, to eventually thrive. What keeps you going? Because especially we're coming out of a pandemic and we talked about all the event money. Yes. You guys were the event station. Mm-hmm. Yes. Like if there was somebody passing out pretzel bags, it was you guys at a concert or whatever. How do you see this world moving forward? Because you said radio changed, media changed, and it has. What do you look at down the road and say, how can we adapt? Because you're probably the only one that can adapt.
Yes. Well, I mean, to your point, I told you, I'm a big visualization person. I've always equated this for, decades now, that we are the mammals running between the toes of the dinosaurs. And as they take these giant plodding steps, just when they lift to the foot, I can run back and forth 3 times. And literally the scraps that they bite giant chunks of, what just falls out of their mouth, is enough to feed me and sustain me.
Right.
So I just stay out of their way. If they aren't looking at me to step on me, I'm okay. I can shuck and jive and maneuver and keep going.
But there was a time,
oh, absolutely,
15, 20 years ago, because, and I should say this, when I was coming up as a young lad, CD101 was like, that's where we went.
Oh yeah.
Because the period of half my family's from England. Mm-hmm. So Brit Pop was a very big deal. And I think people, when they hear Brit Pop, they think of, trying to think of the trash music, like a Justin Bieber. It wasn't that. It was people that literally came from the slum parts of Europe that had bands, Oasis, Blur, Stereophonics, all that, where these guys finally started making money. And by the time the 3rd album out, they all had cocaine issues. So the albums had just horrible distortion and all this other stuff, but you still loved it because you love that band. And that's what you guys were playing.
Yes.
But at the time it was new and no one else was playing it.
Right.
Then Top 40 goes, oh, these guys, they got one single, so we're going to push them to the top.
Yes.
But you were the ones that played it first, like Pearl Jam, Nirvana.
Oh, sure.
I mean, talk about the big room, because I can't say how cool this thing is, because as a younger kid, I wanted to go to the big room.
Well, what you should do is do one of your podcasts from the big room. That way the whole audience can see it.
Nate nodded that we can do it.
There you go.
What was cool about the big room, though, and I bring this up today because this happened in 1996, I think. My favorite band of all time is Oasis, and you had Noel Gallagher there.
Yes.
And he played in the big room, which is he's doing a live performance for people that are just in this room.
Yes.
But that's what you guys were known for. Mm-hmm. Nobody could copy it. And it still exists today.
Yes.
So if we went to your station today, you have live bands that play in your building.
Yeah, we had Kay Flay that did it Saturday.
Yeah, but you're constantly doing what radio was about.
Yes.
What is your take on when you look at radio as it's so homogenized, right? Mm-hmm. You're doing radio.
Yes.
The rest of them are broadcasting
audio.
Yes. I was trying to think.
I mean, you know, you said it in a different way than I said. I always say I'm just a small hardware store going against Lowe's or Home Depot.
Right.
The difference is if you go to Lowe's, you walk in, I have a screw. I need the nut for it. I've got to go dig through and find, and there's a bag of 7 of them, and I just need one, and but if I go to the hardware store, I can say, hey, come with me, sir. They walk back, they open a little drawer up, and they go, here you go, 7 cents. I go, thanks, and I walk out the door, because that's what I needed.
Right.
I don't need 7 of them.
Right.
And I don't want to go look for an hour. I just want what I want.
Or ask someone that doesn't know anything about the product that you're asking about.
Correct. And look, don't get me wrong. Lowe's, Amazon, they have their place, but we do too. And that's the thing, because if you don't look at that, and if people don't understand that, it's about the choice that you have. People, you know, right now the world is screaming choice, freedom. It's like, this is the stuff that actually matters as much, because if you don't support the small things, then you won't have them. And if they aren't there, you miss them later going.
You lose choice.
You lose choice.
Right. By not supporting the small person,
Yep.
You're eradicating your own choice.
You are.
But let's go deeper into this part. What I find is, especially I've been doing this 23 years, whatever.
But you look so youthful.
Well, it's just because of this shirt and the fact that I dress like I'm 13 years old. But when I look at a misunderstanding of how marketing works, mm-hmm. what people have forgotten is it's easy. There's a thing called a ranker, and it just lists the most popular stations. And in my business, if I want to do this an easy way, show me the top 5 stations. I'll either buy the top 3 or buy the top 5. Because chances are I can't make a mistake if I bought the best ones that are here. So then if it didn't work, well, radio doesn't work.
Right.
What we forget is the end user, mm-hmm. because we don't identify who they are. It is a flawed system, but you know your listener.
Oh, we do.
Right? Other people will tell you what research says their listeners are.
Right.
Right. I believe that there's a different thing chasing a culture or a tribe than there is buying buckets of people.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, tribe is a very good description. We call it tribe because we don't intentionally try and create tribe. You can't. It has to occur naturally. What you do is you get that from culture. By creating culture, tribe follows.
Right.
And all we do is try and create a culture that is one that is adhering to the basic principles of being a person, being a human. Do good things happen. You know, share information that's what people want to get. Giving people products that they want to know about. You know, pointing people in the direction of positive events or things or information. That creates that tribe that people want to come back to. It's sort of like with anything, if you think about it, you have your behaviors. You have a toothpaste brand that you buy. And unless they do something that is egregious, you buy that toothpaste brand every time. It sits on your counter.
Even if it is egregious, it can work the other way because we are now, it's a two-party race, right? Yes. So I don't mean everything is political. So if you support one thing, I'm going to go over here.
Well, right.
Well, then I'm going to support this because you're going over here. What I find amazing about the fact that this station, even moving as many times as it has, your people came with you.
Well, yeah.
But do you remember the end of the Truman Show?
Sure.
I tell guys this story all the time that when I'm watching that movie, it is so tied into what we do. When he's walking through that door, he's making that choice. They just say, well, what else is on, and flip the channel, and they never go back, which
right.
is what radio, well, they're tired of hearing this, so we'll just change our format. You guys didn't. You stuck with it. So you should be commended on that. What I want to know is, in your opinion, because we're almost out of time, unbelievably, is where do you see the future of what you're going to do with your station?
Interestingly enough, you know, it's funny. We'll just keep evolving. And, you know, the idea of breaking bands has always been our sort of cultural attaché of like, that's what we do. We break bands. years ago, I used to look at some of the big radio stations, HFS or 99X or NEW, K-Rock, and like aspire to be them. They're gone. Right. Every one of them is gone. We're the ones that are left now. So they aspire to be us. And I kind of laugh and kind of snicker and go, okay, I guess we just outlived everybody. And it's just because we've adapted, and not having a corporate culture mentality has what's allowed us to do that. So the future, I always say, look, we were the original social media. We're immediate, we're transportable, we're free. So social media was sort of that way initially. It's immediate.
But isn't that what social media is anyway? Mm-hmm. I mean, essentially we can share videos, pictures, all that.
Yeah.
And you and I had this conversation. There is no new media.
No.
It is repurposing something that existed, right? So Facebook is a portion of, when you're reading an article, that's the newspaper.
Yep.
When you're seeing a video, that's television. When you're hearing audio, it's radio. There is no new thing.
Nope.
So when people say, oh, I don't listen to radio or radio's dead, it might be to you. But I guarantee if I got in your car, you wouldn't let me touch your radio if I was in Pat, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because no, those are my decisions.
Right.
Spotify, iTunes, all that other stuff is still radio.
Yes.
But people's behaviors do not change.
No.
Right?
No.
And that's the thing that I think is amazing, is those people, you've lost a lot of people because you let them pass through.
Right.
You could have held on to them until they were 60 years old.
Yeah, but the problem is then I would have only held on to this sort of finite object. And to me, I can't do that and survive. What I have to do is open the doors and become infinite and allow everybody in.
Right.
And the people that want to stay, and the people that don't. But it allows them to have that choice for them to stay.
If people, before we get out of here, if people want to check it out that are out of state or just don't even know about you, that are in state, how can they see what you're doing?
Well, I mean, we try and do stuff on our social media. We're at CD929 FM, CD929.com, all of our social medias, our YouTube channel. You can see big room performances of bands that came in during the pandemic that we videotaped and put up there. We actually are still doing that. We've got a band that actually wants to perform live and have us do a live stream because it's sold out. And they want to do a live stream and have it forever in, a month. It's like, great, we can do that. So yeah, you can check out all that stuff. We're technologically savvy. You have to be.
You guys were the first ones and you still continue to be that way.
We try. I mean, again, look, it's funny. I always think about radio as this sort of endearing, sort of like, oh, radio, it's so cool. I remember, but it's still here. A lot of people still use it.
Right.
94% of people still use it with unwittingly realize it. The funny thing is that your phone, a video, Facebook, all those things are top of mind awareness, things that you have to pay attention to. Because again, if you're driving, you can't be doing this. You shouldn't be anyway.
Speak for yourself.
But you can listen to radio because it can be in the background. So you can have dinner. You can cut your grass. You can, hang out with friends. It's a passive medium that doesn't demand it doesn't grab and say, pay attention to me. But in the background, you still hear about the lawyers and you hear about the doctors and you hear about the home builders, and all this advertising still subliminally gets into your little brain that you think about when, God, I need to replace my windows. Oh, I heard that. I always hear that commercial for, you don't know where you heard that commercial from. Was it on TV or did I see it? But you did.
Right.
And that's what our goal is, and it works.
And never forget, President Jim Biden said, get your kids near the record player. That's going to be it for Broad Street Radio. We will see you next week.